welcome to this new edition of the All in Skills podcast. And today I'm very honoured and very delighted to be joined by Ellis Rich, OBE. Ellis, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Ellis, if you could give the people listening, the people watching, a little bit about who you are, where you are, and what it is that you do.
I am a musician, and I always wanted to get into some area of the music industry. Unlike my mother, who initially wanted me to be a hairdresser and then wanted me to be a television engineer, but I saw an ad for a postboy in a music publisher called Feldman's in Soho, and I applied and got the job. It was quite horrible, the job, but there was a guy working in the arranging department called Chad Stewart. And Chad Stewart had a small hit record called Yesterday Is Gone. It was Chad and Jeremy Clyde, who became an actor, and he left because the record was starting to do quite well. And I said, I can do that job. I can do arranging. I can do anything you want. One of the stories is you've got to be very careful who you upset, because I have been promised that I could have this new arranging job provided they were able to replace me in the post room, because it was a very busy post room, packing up sheet music and posting them off and making the tea and lovely jobs like that. And week after week went by, and there was nobody who wanted this job, and I'm stuck in the post room. So finally, I think on a Friday, I'd had enough, and I went into my boss and called him by his first name, which I had never done, and said, I'm really sorry, Ben, but if you can't sort this out by Monday, I'm going to leave. And he said, well, I can't have you talking to me like that, so you're fired. I went home and said, I think I've ruined this. Obviously, I said it in quite slightly different words. And so I think I've ruined this. And Monday morning, I come in to the entrance, which is on the side of it, and I see a new boy in the post room. So I thought, what an idiot. So I go straight up to the boss and I said, look, I must apologise for the way I spoke to you on Friday. I'm really sorry. I'm happy to wait until you find a replacement. And he said, have you been in the post room downstairs yet, Ellis? I says, no, I just came straight up. I very rarely lie, but that was one of them. And he accepted it. Years later, he told me he never believed me. And so then I got the job. But what was really interesting was I was now in a job basically doing things that I enjoyed, which is sort of one of my, for me, it's so important that any job you do, you've got to have some enthusiasm for it. You've got to want to do it, because otherwise you won't do it well. And you might get by, but you won't do it well. But the thing that really exploded was that back in the day, when sheet music was still selling, a typical bit of sheet music was 2 or 3 pages. And if it was only 2 pages, they'd put an ad on the back. And then along comes Queen. And their first single was 7 Seas of Rye, and it was a reasonable hit. We got it on Top of the Pops, but that was about all. But then the next one was Killer Queen. And I loved doing sheet music that was so accurate that you could play along with the record in real time. But the problem with Killer Queen was, although there were lots of repeats, they weren't exact. They might have put an extra bar in or a bit of 5/4 or anything. So I had to write it all out, and the result was 10 pages long. And they said, we've never had a 10-page. I said, well, I'm sorry, I've done all this work, and normally they do like a couple of thousand. Because they weren't sure about it, they did 200. They sold out in a week, and then they realised I'd hit on something. And then I had to do all the Queen stuff, and it's all still in print. And I never got paid for it because that was my job.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just ask, at the point where you were sort of essentially took yourself out of the post room, how old were you at that point?
18, 17, about 17.
So a young man. Also worth noting, I believe you have a musical background.
I'm a pianist, yeah. I taught piano from when I was 5. And my father used to play piano in Roy Fox's band when he came over from the US, so it was in the blood. Mm-hmm. My uncle was a violinist, so, it was all
a musical home.
A musical home. But just to stay with the sheet music for a moment, was that I had this silly idea You know what a busker is, someone that plays on the underground. And buskers rely on very simple music. They can't really read, but they can read a chord symbol and they can... So I decided that went to the print manager and said, I've got this idea. Why don't I start off by doing a busker's book for classics? So really famous classics, including Mozart 40 and including Pachelbel, and including lots of stuff like that. All by Myself from Rachmaninoff, all those bits of tune. I got my secretary, who was very pretty, to have a picture to put her on the front, and it just called Buskers for Classics for Buskers. And because it wasn't really part of my job, they said, look, you can have a choice. You can either have £1 a page, or we'll give you a royalty. And like an idiot, I said, I'll take the £1 a page.
Oh.
A couple of years later, I read an article that cheered me up, was that the original TV series of Star Trek, they were all offered a choice of $5,000 each actor, including Shatner, or a royalty. And they all took the $5,000. Made me feel a bit better. And then I did a classics for TV themes and a classic, and they're also still in print. But of course they would be.
Did you take £1 a page for those too?
What?
Did you take £1 a page for those ones as well?
Yeah, and they're all still in print, as is all the Queen sheet music. So, you know, but I think Bohemian Rhapsody was even longer. So,
well, how many pages was Bohemian Rhapsody?
I think it was about 14 or 15. Because Brian May. I won't use the language he used, but he said, I could hardly play some of these solos, so God knows how you managed to write them down, because I had the solos as well. I was paranoid about getting it absolutely correct.
Just out of interest, I mean, how long does it take to transcribe a song like Bohemian Rhapsody to...
Well, I got myself an adjustable speed turntable, because it was on vinyl. There wasn't anything else, or cassette. So I had an adjustable speed turntable and cassette, because it had to be in pitch. Otherwise, you'd go crazy trying to, if it just was in the cracks. So I was able to adjust it so it was dead in key with the piano. And there's electronic equipment that does that now, but it wasn't around then. You really had to write everything down and stop it and check it again. It took forever. But because I enjoyed it, I didn't care that it took forever. I wanted it to be correct, which is really one of my things about liking what you're doing. It's so important, because you can't do something well if it's just like it's a job. I don't think I've done a day's work in my life. That just is how I feel, because I enjoy it. Yeah.
So you went from transcribing music, the next move from that?
And
where did that take you?
Well, they made me international professional manager initially, because the guy had left, and then they made me international manager. And I had a few ideas that no one had thought of, but they ended up being phenomenally successful. And the first one was that I was now at EMI. EMI had bought Feldman, and there was an EMI sub-publisher all over the world. There were 20 or 30 of them. So I introduced the idea of a news sheet once a month, and I would ask them all to tell me what exciting things they'd done with EMI songs the previous month. What hadn't occurred to me was it would act as an incentive for all of them to do better. So everyone said, so the guy in Germany got a song recorded in German, so the guy in Japan wanted to do it, or the woman in, and so it went on. So it just sort of wrapped up everything. But my finest hour, if you like, which is in my brain still my finest hour, was that a group called Blondie, their first hit was actually in Australia. The first hit was called Rip It to Shreds and Ex-Offender in Australia, and it was in the top 5. And the head of EMI rang me and said, I won't attempt the accent, so let me play this record, it's so great. And he played me the record over the phone when people didn't do that. He sent me a picture of Debbie Harry on a telex. A picture of Debbie Harry made up of numbers and figures and lines and stuff like that. And he said, look, I'm probably not supposed to say this, but I don't care. He said that I've offered them $250 for Australia, but I reckon you'd get it for the world outside USA. USA wasn't available because they were American. So I offered them $5,000 for EMI, and they took it. So what then happened was EMI did a lot. They got the Blondie deal, and their first single in England was called Denis Denis. And much to our disappointment, it wasn't written by Blondie. It was written by a guy living in New York called Neil Levingston, and they had a tiny hit with Randy and the Rainbows. Well, I found him, and I offered him a very small amount of money to give me the publishing for Denis Denis, so it looked like it was all EMI, which it was.
Uh-huh.
But that really gave me a boost, and it was a bit of luck. I mean, the guy in Australia had to be ringing me, playing me. I had to like the telex picture of her. There was lots of things. And, it just really helped me, and then I signed other acts. Needed an assistant, and Simon Cowell's father, Eric, who's no longer with us, was in the main board of EMI. He was on the board, and he wanted a job for his son. And I needed an assistant, so I interviewed him. Well, really, he interviewed me. But he was very good and very personable, and I took him on. When I left EMI in 81, I took him with me. So we had E&S Music, Ellis and Simon. But he was always playing tricks, and a lot of it's in the book. A lot of it's not in the book, but you know, in the end, we parted company. I won't go into detail, and we just got bigger and bigger, and we've got 250,000 songs now, which is mad. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I'm now just a music publisher, and we've had a number of hits. We've got a lot of old songs that we'll try and get into ads and things like that. And I really enjoy what I do, and my wife thinks I should have stopped by now.
But you still enjoy it, right?
But I still enjoy it.
Do you actually take yourself off to an office at all, or do you now work from home?
I'm working from home, where I have been since COVID, but everything is available online. I mean, our royalty system, our copyright system, there is no difficulty in doing what all of us do. There's about 8 of us. There's no difficulty in everyone doing their job from home. So we are all mostly working from home. And, you know, I'm still enjoying it, strangely.
You've done some interesting work with young people,
yes,
finding their way in the music industry. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Small Green Shoots has been going for, I think, about 14, 15 years now. And initially I was chairman. And after 10 years, I said, look, you know, let someone younger come in here, because we were dealing with young people. And it's been very, very successful. I mean, we get support from the Arts Council, from the lottery, from Comic Relief, and a lot of them seem to feel that we are getting to the people that they aren't getting to. About 3 times a year, we have sort of various things that we do to help young people. And those young people can be anything from 16 to 22, 23. And we give them a sort of a crash course that helps them in the area that they want to be in. So if they want to be in music publishing, we might pay for them to go on a music publishing course. If they want to be a studio engineer, so we use that money necessarily to send them elsewhere. We also give them a crash course in how to be an employee, which some of them haven't got. And we like to think we give them a home from home. Some of them are underprivileged families, and we feel, this may be a bit controversial, but we feel that careers advice is not the best here in the UK, especially as it seems to be a bit of it's not a nice job to be working in the music industry, or to be a DJ, or to be working in a studio. There doesn't seem to be any careers advice from people that understand the area at all. We're only too pleased to give them that advice. But the only sad thing is that every time we make this available, we're oversubscribed 3 or 4 times. So the good side of that is that the people that get through are really very good. But it's a shame that 75% of them have got to wait and maybe try again. And I get my feet wet with this as well, because I give them a little seminar, half-a-day seminar about whatever it is they want to learn about. So publisher people, I'll explain about how you register a song and why it's important and what should be included. So, and I do that and I enjoy it, because by talking to the cream of the people that have applied, your normal, almost biased image of young kids is they're rude, or they won't be listening, or they won't apply themselves. But these are great. They're always great. They always, they've listened by the questions they ask, and they're just a lovely group of people. And maybe I've just been lucky. But they are great, and we've got lots and lots of people still working for majors. We once had a call from a major record label, said, can you send us 2 more? We don't need to interview them. And that, because they just love the standard that comes from us. And that's really working well, and still working well. 15th anniversary, I think, coming up. And we do concerts and we do various things. But no, it's really, really very enjoyable.
Has the complexion of the music industry changed dramatically over this, let's say, over this 50-year period?
Well, you've got 2 different things, really. First of all, you've got the technical side of it, which is enormously changed, because with Spotify, with iTunes, with Facebook, with YouTube, you're getting pennies, lots of pennies, but lots of lines. Now, you may or may not know that Excel is limited to 1 million lines. Well, we passed that a long time ago. So we have to use some software called Split CSV to make them into 1 million things, that then we can put them back into Excel. The actual work level has increased. Without a computer, you'd have no chance. So the technical side of it has got a lot better. I still don't think music is appreciated financially as much as it should be. I think songwriters get less money than everybody else, less money than the artist, less money than the record company. And I've always thought, and when I was PRS chairman, I always said the same thing: without the song, there is nothing. You can make the best produced record in the world with the best musicians. If there's no song there, it won't be a hit. And I've also said that everything's got a hook, even Rachmaninoff. Everything has a hook, and it could be anything. It could be a rhythm, could be a violin solo, it doesn't matter. There's always a hook. So, and I've done a lot of, I went round, I got very friendly with a girl that was running the Barbados, the Bayesian Collection Society, same as PRS, obviously. And I helped her with her website, and I had an idiot's guide to a publishing contract. And then about 3 weeks later, she's back in Barbados, and she rings up, she said, look, if I fly you to Barbados and put you in a hotel, how much will you charge me to do a seminar on copyright? I said, look, if you fly me to Barbados and put me in a hotel, I won't charge you anything. The next thing that happens is I get a phone call from St. Lucia, from Grenada, and from Jamaica. So I end up in Jamaica on breakfast television, talking about it, free seminar, and I think I expected 50 people, there were nearly 400, and I found money for people that had not been correctly registered or not been properly represented, including a very large amount for a songwriter. The only problem was I started getting a lot of phone calls from people that thought I might be able to find money for them too.
Yes, yeah.
But in some cases I did. But I mean, the big problem, I think, now is that an artist is someone with a creative brain, and there's no reason why they should have an efficient administrative one. And it's very difficult now. It's very difficult to register properly. You can't get paid for YouTube unless they've got the reference number for it, called the ISRC. There's a lot of technical work that is often not done. So it's really our sort of, what we try to do, to find money for people that weren't getting paid properly, and invariably it's just out there somewhere. So, and I enjoy that too. We get people that talk to other people, so we get a lot of people that come in that have been sent to us.
In terms of protection of IP, have things continued to be challenging, or has that now been somewhat sorted out? I mean,
it's been sorted up to a point. I think that, I mean, if you're using Spotify, you're buying less records. And there's a bit of an upsurge in vinyl, but only because some people like the sound you get from vinyl, and I can understand that. To get it on a CD, which is also not so prevalent anymore, you just, I can understand why people just like vinyl. is a different sound, much more real. But the other thing that's happened is that back in the day when you went into a record shop, the only things that were in stock were the top 50. Spotify, everything is in stock. From the beginning of time, everything is in stock. So that has strange effects on the music. You can, within the industry, you can get updated charts every couple of days. You don't just have to wait till the end of the week. So you can see the effect of, say, a TV program on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, people are downloading the theme, maybe, or something that was sung on that TV program. So this is much more instant. And the other thing that's instant is the internationalization of music. Because once it's on the internet, anybody in the world can hear it, or anybody in the world can upload a piece of music they've written. So it has done a lot. It's widened the kind of music that you can hear. So I think there are some good things, but also old bands are still coming back now. I mean, the Stones, I mean, Engelbert Humperdinck is on a world tour at the moment. I think he's 86.
Yeah. Is that presumably for somebody like Engelbert Humperdinck or the Rolling Stones or whoever, that to go on a tour is a way of making the money that you don't get from record sales, right?
Yes, but sometimes to get as an assistant on a tour, as a support, they'll often do that for nothing, just so they can be on a tour with a major artist.
Oh, they'll do that.
Oh, absolutely, because it's so important now. And once again, live is more important. But mind you, have you seen ABBA? The ABBA concert is so amazing.
I've only heard good things.
You cannot believe you're not seeing them really. It's quite incredible. And it's like nothing I've seen because they're holding hands and walking in front of each other. You can't normally see that electronically.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I went twice. I've been twice.
Amazing. So what about then for the band starting out? What kind of challenges are they facing today that they wouldn't maybe have faced 1975? Or maybe things are easier overall?
Things are easier because there's a lot of local radio stations, including some internet radio. One of my sons, his band was playing on Rhubarb FM, which I had not heard of until he told me he was playing on there. So there's a lot of opportunities to get your music on radio now. It's harder to get on TV, of course, but there's things like BBC Introducing where they're looking for new acts. So the media is expanded, but the downside is there's a lot of music out there. There's a lot of music on the internet. A lot of it not very good, but nevertheless, you've got to fight your way through that crowd of music. You know, concerts are great and people will go to a concert and then maybe they'll still sell CDs at a concert because they're cheap to manufacture now, and they'll be selling them in the venue where they've been playing. So it's easier to get yourself heard, but it's much more crowded. That's really where it is.
And I suppose people are angling for that viral moment, that thing that will somehow make them the next. I think Justin Bieber started on YouTube, didn't he?
Yes, TikTok is also very good and can also generate interest because a lot of people are looking at TikTok and hearing very quick videos. But if you've got a real hook on your song, you don't need very much to know it's there. And some records have started because of TikTok. Facebook, not so much now. It's not the sort of place now where people look.
Facebook's for the elderly, isn't it?
Well, I wasn't going to say that. But no, it's interesting. Thinking back, there were a few things that I did that I wasn't in control of, but retrospectively was really pleased I did. And when I became chairman of PRS, it obviously involved me being on television and being on radio and talking to people. And I wasn't happy doing public speaking. And they sent me on a media course. And I've now got a newfound respect for when you see a reporter from some far off country and you realise that there's nobody there. He's standing there talking just to a camera. And that's very, very difficult. And now I don't care. And there were things that I were taught, like you almost talk like you're talking to a child by your voice going up and down. There were silly little tips, which I always keep thinking, that's so useful that was. So I don't have nerves anymore. I
Hmm.
just don't care. I was at the Albert Hall introducing Small Faces, which was a charity concert. I just didn't care, and I could never have done that. I probably wouldn't have even gone out on the stage. That bit of me just been left.
Thinking about young people again, and maybe other areas of the music industry that perhaps aren't so obvious. So somebody with an instrument in front of a mic is very, very obvious. What roles are there for young people who are thinking, I'm not musical, but I love the music industry? Are there niche areas that they could be looking at or
Well,
exploring?
there is management, which is obviously very useful, but hard work because there is a lot, as I said, there is a lot out there. And a decent manager can get you some work and try and get you some live work. And maybe initially you're going around for very small amounts of money, but you have to start somewhere. I went to a club in a cellar in Dalston last Thursday night, and you would never have thought this was a club. It was just a tiny little side street down the side of the Dalston Kingsway station. I've never walked down the street in my life. And you walk into this pretty much empty bar, and then you walk down the stairs, and the place was teeming with people. Absolutely packed. And there was a really good actress, a girl I went to see, and it was just so, her name was Lily, and she was superb. It was just a lovely sound that she had, and she was particularly good. But my point is, she was playing in a cellar in Dalston,
Hmm.
and it was packed with people. Now, obviously,
Hmm.
she's got following,
Hmm.
and she tells her followers where she is. So really, following is the key, and you've got to build up your social media. The thing that's odd now is that people no longer have to go to a record company. They can start themselves off.
Hmm.
And then that's when they get the attention to the record company. Going to a record company without some social media figures to show or some live interest or something, very, very difficult now to get a record deal because it costs a lot of money to break an artist big time. So they would look for something that started on its own. So the management job, I think, is an important gig to get. And PR is slightly different to management. So I mean, there is some work out there. Musicians, of course, always, but obviously a lot of it now you can reproduce electronically.
Hmm.
But Lily in Cellar in Dalston had 4 musicians with her, which was a very pleasant change to have real music as well. And maybe there's an interest in that as well. So there are things to do, but you gotta, it's a bit like you've got to build up a reputation to get that kind of work.
Hmm.
An A&R job at a record label um, is A&R is artist and repertoire, and the old joke used to be they would pass it around from one person to another until somebody passed on it, because it gives them, they're always nervous about making a mistake, and they do make mistakes, but there were some brilliant people within the music industry, and sometimes I would do a deal that would someone bring me a record and say, what do you like? If you can place this with a record label, you can have the publishing for no advance. And I took a record to a very big name in the record business back in the day. And he put the record on, but went back in the day when you did put the record on.
Hmm.
And after he said, I like it, he said, what I'll do, he said, I'll take it for Europe. He said, because what I think will happen is that I think it'll be a very small hit in England, but I think it'll be huge in France. So he takes the record and it comes out. It gets up to 38 in England and drops out. In France, I believe it still holds the record for the biggest selling single, and it's called Dancing the Night Away, and the group was called Vogue. And the guy that made these comments was called Roger Ames, and I think he's retired now, but he was at Universal. And he had the world's best ears. He just knew. I mean, how accurate can you be?
So he knew that culturally that would fall better in the French market than the British.
Absolutely. Bang. And sometimes that happens. And sometimes I will hear a record or a song and I will just know it is going to be successful. So then my pitch is I will keep working this record or this song because somebody will agree with me. And that often happens. And I don't know what's going to happen. I can hear the most bizarre thing.
That goes across genres, because I was looking at your site. You've got all sorts of things in your stable.
Yes, country, R&B, reggae, I mean everything. Because if someone rings us up looking for a type of music, I want to be able to know that I've got something that's a bit like what they're looking for. But if I don't have what they're looking for, I won't send them anything, because I want them to get into believing that I are listening to what they're saying.
Ellis, it's been very, very nice talking to you.
Thank you.
And I just wondered, is there, I suppose, a single piece of advice that you would give to a young person who's coming out with their undergraduate degree, thinking, yep, music industry for me? Not even suggesting somebody going through the post room as you did, but
I think I've got 3 bits of advice, actually. I'm sorry to overburden you.
That's fine.
My favourite one is under promise. And when I started, I wanted an overdraft. And I went to the bank and I said, will you give me £1 overdraft for every £1 I put in the bank? And he said, yeah, I will do that. I said, well, how much would you do that? He said, no, I'll do it. What kind of money are you expecting? And I was expecting to manage to find about £50,000 in advances to represent my business. But I told him 20. So when it was, and I was right, it was 48 or something. And I was with that bank for years. But that's how I got their interest and their support, by under-promising. Because it's so bad the other way around. If you over-promise, straight away you've gone down. Always under-promise. Then my second thing was, do something you like doing. Because you will always do it better than doing something that you really don't want to be doing. And then the last one was, get some media training. If your job involves you talking to lots of people, even individually, it's important. And it wasn't very expensive, and it stood me in good stead all the time. It's just useful. Because people are often not respectful to people that are trying to come up the ladder. And if you're not careful, you'll meet them on the way down. You've really got to respect everybody. You don't know the capability of the people that you've just met. You cannot afford to think, you've got to be enthusiastic and show that you enjoy what they're doing, to encourage them. But as I say, I haven't done a job ever.
Ellis Rich, thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.